Hello and welcome. My name is Andrew Dunsmore, and I'm here with John Rudolph, the principal percussionist of the Toronto Symphony Orchestra. Mr. Rudolph is also a faculty member of the University of Toronto, the Glenn Gould School of the Royal Conservatory, and the National Youth Orchestra of Canada. Mr. Rudolph, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure to speak with you, Andrew.
Today I'd like to ask a few questions about preparation. As musicians, we all have our own methods of getting prepared for rehearsals and concerts. John, what do you do to prepare for the first rehearsal of a program?
Assuming that you are practicing, well, I'll say, speaking for myself, assuming that I am in shape, in practice shape, that maybe it isn't something the first program after a long summer or a few weeks off. So kind of that's a given that I'm doing my technique, doing my technical work on snare drum and mallets mainly, which is what I mostly play in the Toronto Symphony, occasionally timpani these days, but mainly snare drum and mallets. Assuming I have those chops up, the first thing to do is listen, even if it's a familiar work. In fact, if it is a familiar work, I have to remind myself, go listen to Pines of Rome, John. Yes, you have experience, but you need to listen to it. Write in cues in the music. If it's a new work, well, then absolutely, if I can find a recording. These days, of course, on YouTube, it's very easy to find most everything. And I do a lot of listening, if possible, playing along with the recording. I did that recently for a Scheherazade performance. I particularly like the Gergiev Vienna Philharmonic recording or YouTube video because it was faster than we usually go in the Toronto Symphony, and I felt like if I could handle Gergiev's tempos, I'd be okay with the TSO. So that's mainly it. Get the music, make notation in the music. I find as I've gotten older, I'm less self-conscious about writing in the music. I used to think, gee, if this goes to the Montreal Symphony or the Vancouver Symphony and they see a lot of stupid notations, they'll think, what is this guy doing? But I have no qualms about doing that. I'll even get out an erasable red pencil. It's important not to deface the music, and write whatever I need. If I need to write a flat next to an A, I'll do it. Or more importantly, it's to direct me maybe to the next instrument, as you all know. And then as principal, of course, I have to make sure we have all the instruments, have to make sure the parts are assigned, and we have the correct number of extras. And that, of course, takes place, well, months in advance if the music is ready.
Someone told me once that the audience doesn't see the music, so you can write in whatever you want, so long as it helps you.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
And a setup and a floor plan is also important if it's a, as you know, if it's a contemporary piece or something with several instruments. Also have to determine if we might need two of an instrument. Maybe we'll need two bass drums or we'll need two xylophones just to minimize the movement on stage.
Of course. Well, good. How do you know that you've prepared adequately for that program? We've done all of the things. We've gotten it. It's the night before or it's the week before, and you feel ready, but you're not sure. Is it going to be okay?
Well, that's a great question. I suppose you don't really know until the first rehearsal. See how it goes. And as you know, professional orchestras, the first rehearsal is not a learning experience. You're expected to have the music ready. And sure, well, I just don't want to make dumb mistakes. I mean, we all make mistakes, but I don't want to make like a miscounting mistake. And that's why I write cues in the music. That's where the listening comes in again. I just feel like I don't want to make those kinds of mistakes. If I miss a note, forget to turn the snares on, which I did a couple of weeks ago, something like that. Just that's just a lapse maybe in focus or something. But as far as missing an entrance or not coming in is, I guess, the worst thing, and that comes from the listening. But How do I know? That's a really good question, Andrew. I think we really don't know until we go through it in the first rehearsal, and you well know sometimes you need to make adjustments. If oh well, I can't get to the glockenspiel, okay, I'll have to move that, or I can't use those sticks to change mallets. Maybe have to use the same mallets on two different mallet instruments. So there are adjustments that do happen in the first rehearsal, and maybe the tempo will be a little different than I anticipate. So it's certainly not going to be perfect, but I think you know. I think you just know if you've listened and you know your hands feel good, you've done all you can, and then it's just time to let it happen.
It's very good advice. Yeah, to be flexible and to know that you've done the work. That's it's a very good it's very good advice. So getting towards preparation from like the first rehearsal to more of a long-term um, topic, what kinds of challenges present themselves during the orchestral season?
Well, repertoire related, certainly. New music comes immediately to mind. We have a new Creations Festival. Many orchestras have new music festivals, and that's a big challenge for me and for the percussion section. Again, it's preparing the music, doing the assignments, and really making sure we have all of the instruments. I had an extensive, well, gamelan part that I had to lay out the gongs and learn a tuned gong part for this past New Creations this past spring. Also had a car parts drum set where we had to go to the auto recycling yard and amass a fuel tank and a bumper and some hubcaps. So that was also a challenge. But those types of things, I guess, come up. That's the main thing. Even now, as I look at next season, I'll be thinking about next March and looking as soon as I can get that music. Our library at the TSO is very good. They get us the music at least 6 weeks, sometimes more in advance, so that helps. And then as I look at the season, you're always on the lookout for the big tunes, the major excerpts. We open the season with Young Person's Guide, and of course we all know that. But I'll be playing snare drum. I always think about the trumpet variation in that, being prepared for that. And Porgy Bess is on it. These are tunes that, of course, I know and have played, but the older I get, I almost feel like there's more pressure. Certainly, I have more students coming and more accomplished students coming and listening, and I just feel like I've got to keep my level of playing at the highest possible level. So those two things, I guess, looking out for the new music and the big pieces. And there are always surprises. Frequently, I'll look and, this will be an easy week. And it turns out it wasn't. We just did Poulenc Concerto for two pianos and orchestra. And it has a small percussion part, which I've played before. But Stéphane Deneuve was our guest conductor, and he was very demanding. I'm not overly so, but he really wanted some different sounds. And I had to make sure I had several drums. He'd like one drum, and he wanted me to tune it a little bit differently. So there are always surprises. Sometimes I think what I think is going to be a really easy week is definitely not.
Does it ever happen in the other way around when a difficult-looking week turns out easier?
Yeah, but somehow less so.
Yeah. Oh, well.
In your experience, I'm sure you feel that way. Yeah, and I think that goes back to the preparation. If you feel like you are well prepared. Oh, that wasn't so bad. Yes, I do have that feeling. Not often enough, but
Of course. So what changes do you make to your preparation from week to week and month to month and even season to season with those kinds of challenges that kind of go up and down in mind?
Well, I think it goes back to technique and just having your chops. Capriccio Espanol turns up. I don't want to be building my soft roll. It's something that I should just have under my fingers. And as you know, we all know, it takes really daily work on the snare drum for that to happen. So I think it goes back to the technique. I'm playing my scales. If I'm playing timpani, Sometimes that throws me a curve because I don't usually play timpani, and if I do have to, I just want to make sure that I have enough notice, and I'm just doing my roll exercises. So just kind of the basics. I also think playing outside of the orchestra is really important. Playing as many recitals. As you know, my wife Kathleen and I do flute and percussion recitals. We just played for the Canadian Flute Association on Sunday, and it was really good for me to have to get some just different music and not totally excerpts. I find in the Toronto Symphony, I feel like I need to be playing excerpts all the time or focus on that just to be ready for the big tunes. But important in my playing as a musician is to have that chamber music, and if you have a chance to play solos, that's even better. But I find I need to force myself to find these opportunities, play recitals, even if it's just school shows. Play a school concert. Kathleen and I have a duo, flute and percussion, and we play school concerts. And just that experience, having to solo in front of an audience, I feel like that builds my confidence and just my overall growth as a musician. Also, one of the other challenges I think are ethnic, or whether it's playing congas or djembe. I had a piece on djembe, and I have to confess, I have many friends that play very, very good djembe and colleagues, so I'll frequently talk to them or listen and watch what they're doing. But this particular time, I just went on YouTube and got some basic grooves and sounds and just got comfortable playing. So I think looking for those opportunities as well. Just going over to a friend's house and jamming. If you're lucky enough to have a group. I know you have a trio, right?
I do.
You have a percussion trio. So you must do a wealth of music, a great variety of different music.
We do try to, yes.
Yeah. So I mean, don't you agree though that experience is really
Absolutely.
important?
Any chance to perform with good musicians, be it in the privacy of your own studio or with some friends, or it's any kinds of performing, it's always going to be good for that confidence that you're talking about. You're absolutely right. So we're going to go a little bit into little minutia in personal practicing. How do you balance learning new material with maintaining that standard repertoire and what you say is the big tunes, and also keeping in mind what the music should be, musicianship and technique?
I sometimes find it's a scramble if it's a new piece. Um, well, I'll give you an example. One of the pieces Kathleen played and I played was, of course, the Gareth Farr flute and marimba, Kembang Suling. And we've done it before, but it had been a while. I had been focusing on the end of the TSO season, so I was cramming it a little bit. And I found that my practicing, I would just go down to the marimba. We did some other pieces as well that I had to practice, but I'd just go down and work on the Farr, start slowly. So I kind of was drawing on experience as far as having the technique, having the four mallet chops or whatever, that I had done that enough in the past, and so maybe I wasn't doing all of the exercises I should have been doing. So that's one example. And if it's a new music piece and I don't know the notes, I find I have to force myself maybe to play a little bit some scales, play scales for a short time, but not as long as I might normally, and make sure I do that, not just go in and start right away playing, learning the notes. But I have to admit that it is a scramble sometimes if you have a new piece with a lot of notes, or even worse, a big setup, and finding the time to go. Finding the space, the instruments. Of course, you're familiar with the Michael Tippett Rose Lake with the numerous. I think we ended up with 52 rototoms. I had 40 some, and Don Kewen had the rest. So finding a space for that, we managed to find a space. It was actually in the archive room at Roy Thompson Hall. We were able to set up all the drums. So that type of a challenge. But I think it's just being aware, starting as early as you can. And I don't always do that. The FAR was a good example this past week. But starting as early as possible, seeing that coming up, and just setting it up. Maybe not 2 weeks ahead, maybe a month or so. And if it takes, I hope I'm not off topic too much, but if it takes maybe an ensemble passage, we just did the music for the film West Side Story, and there was a passage with 3 xylophones, a fugue in the prologue of the movie. And listen to that, by the way, if any of your listeners don't know that, the film version is different than the stage show, or of course symphonic dances. And in the prologue, there's a passage for 3 xylophones. So my point is, Bob Becker and Don Kewen and I said, we've got to get together. And we made sure that it was a week before. Of course, we'd all practiced, but it was a good several days before the first rehearsal. And we had other sessions booked, which we canceled because the first one went well enough. We say, okay, we're ready. But I think that's important. Get with your colleagues. If it is a passage, sometimes I know as principal, I think, I don't want to bother everybody and call a sectional, but that's really important. I think it's not necessary every week. But it also helps me that people go through the parts and we can see if something's not covered. I forgot to assign something. Or where's my cowbell? Whatever. That type of thing happens a lot. For a young player, it's like taking an audition. You don't want to have to learn Porgy and Bess for every audition because you know that there will be other repertoire that you'll have to spend time on. So it's important to have Porgy and Sorcerers and Scheherazade. And if you're playing timpani, Beethoven 9 or 7, of course, Brahms 1. Those aren't the ones you need to be spending a lot of time on, but maybe it's something you don't know.
What tools do you use in the practice room, and what do you find the benefits of using them are?
Well, the main thing is the metronome. We all use the metronome, and I have it on almost probably too much. One of the things I've been doing with it, and inspired actually by some of the masterclass artists we've had at the conservatory, people like Chris Lamb and Cynthia Ye, Mark Damalakis, Dan Bouch, gave me new insight into how to use the metronome. Don Liuzzi is another one. And one of the things is not always have it on the downbeat. But if you're playing Porgy and Bess, put it on 2 and 4. I found that very helpful for Cool in West Side Story to have the click not on, because certainly in the movie, which we did have the soundtrack, everybody's clicked their fingers on 2 and 4. So you need the metronome. If you're having it on 1 and 3, it's not what you're going to experience. So that's one thing, and then experimenting with where the click goes, eliminating clicks. So you're not using maybe Concerto for Orchestra, Bartok as an example, not having that on every quarter note, but maybe on every other quarter note. So if you're tempo in that one, I guess, is another discussion. But let's say 88. I think it's marked 94, but let's say 88. Well, do it at 44, and then if your metronome, and usually most metronomes have this capability, do it one. So not on the downbeat of every measure, but the downbeat of every other measure. And maybe you can go every 4th measure. So you're eliminating clicks. You don't hear the click all the time. For me, it's that builds my inner pulse. And I find if I'm with the metronome, practicing with the metronome, always on the quarter note, I'll get into the rehearsal. Well, you don't have the metronome anymore. And I find I use it as a crutch. So I've been trying to mix up the way I use it. Recording myself is a big thing I'll try to do. And now with, you don't need any sophisticated equipment. Most phones have some kind of simple, recording capability app or whatever. Voice memo, I think it is on the iPhone. And I'll just turn that on and record whatever the passage is. I think of the Bartok as an example. Certainly West Side Story, and it was more for just the style. Of course, when you do this recording, you don't have the metronome on. Sometimes I will start the metronome, record the metronome, stop the metronome, recording still on, and then play. And then go back, and when you listen back, turn on the metronome again and try to line it up with the recorded metronome. Then you hear the live metronome go through your recorded sound, if that makes sense. I like playing along with recordings. I said that before. Put on your favorite YouTube video, put in the earphones, and off you go. And it's just getting the sound in your ear of the orchestra, so that there are no surprises. Back to that first rehearsal question, you know. But those are some of the tools. I mean, the main one I'd say is the metronome, recording myself, and doing a lot of listening.
Good. You mentioned that sometimes feel that the metronome can be a little bit of a crutch. Are there any other drawbacks to any of those tools that we should all be aware of, so we don't depend on them too much or fall into bad habits?
Well, you said it perfectly. I think playing along with recordings, you can tend to be a little reactive, if you know what I mean, where you maybe need to lead a little bit, you are following, and I think that's a big thing, to know when to lead. So maybe doing the listening and not always, not playing along all the time. I believe in it because I love getting the sound, and it's fun. It just is, it's fun. It's like, playing along with your favorite tune on drum set. But yes, I think you said it perfectly. Try to mix it up. And, if you can play for other people, fantastic. If it is an excerpt, just I've brought my neighbors in. My wife is sick of, oh no, I got to hear Bolero again. And so what I'll do is I've even brought I have an amateur musician who lives nearby, and I said, come on in, I'll pour you a scotch, sit here and make me nervous. So I don't do that often, but that is one other tool. And often too, the second time through is always better. I don't know if you've found that.
I think everybody can definitely relate to that.
So we were doing Kiji, and I made sure I had two of my colleagues ready at 6:30 in the conservatory, and I walked in and played the opening of Kiji for them, and then went to the concert. So that's extreme, but we hadn't done it in a long time, and I just wanted to be ready. And I found in rehearsal, the second time through was always a little bit better. I was a little more relaxed. So, and again, Andrew, it comes down to the mental preparation too. At some point, you just have to have that confidence. You're good. You wouldn't have gotten this far without really having a quality background in preparation and strong mental fortitude. You do have that element of trust. Just trust yourself. So maybe some of these techniques, as you said, don't do anything overly so, but I think there does come a time when you just step back and say, hey, I can do this. I know I can do it.
That's probably one of the most important things a performer can say to themselves and believe it. Okay,
so outside of the music, I have taken Alexander technique lessons for the past 16 years, and I found that very, very important, very beneficial. Just gives me something to focus on if you're sitting through two movements before you have to play something, Scheherazade, Tchaikovsky Fourth Symphony, something like that. And just to have the posture, the direct, using just the use of the self. There's a wonderful website, alexandertechnique.com. There's a link on there, Alexander Technique for Musicians. So that's one thing. And I like to run, so I believe in physical fitness. I really think it does relax you. You have to be careful. You have to balance it. You don't want to use too much of your energy in whatever activity you're going to do. But I find if I ride my bike to rehearsal, maybe get up and do a short run in the morning, I'm always more relaxed for that first rehearsal, or whatever rehearsal it is, whatever the service is. Sometimes if we have a rehearsal in the morning and a concert at night, I will try to find that time just to move. and breathe deeply. And breathing, I think, is really important, whether it's through yoga or Pilates or Tai Chi, any of those disciplines. I do a little bit of yoga. I have had some Pilates lessons. But for me, it's mostly my running and Alexander technique. Finding some quiet time and just closing your eyes, breathing deeply, and just clearing your mind. If it's hard to do, it's hard to find time to do that in our busy lives. But if I can make the time, I always find it helpful.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you for making time for us today.
Oh, it's been my great pleasure, Andrew. Please ask me again.
Anytime. Thanks very much.